Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is. And while you're here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'm never staying home alone again. When I was 8 years old, my parents, for the first time ever, allowed my brother Josh and I to stay home alone while they went grocery shopping. I remember the sky getting black as the overcast clouds came rolling in with loud, booming thunderclaps. I was always afraid of storms at that age, so after they left, I closed all the blinds and turned on the TV full blast. "You're such a coward," he professed. "I'm gonna tell Dad how much of a scaredy cat his son is." "Shut up, idiot." At least I don't still wet the bed. Soon a torrential downpour began battering. The house's leaves swirled and trees bent so far as to nearly point downward. I'll never forget it. Back in the 80s, micro machines were a hot commodity toy for kids my age. The commercial depicted the world's fastest, speaking man blathering rapid-fire speech throughout. During the commercial, the storm temporarily knocked out power, and then the screen came back on. "Severe thunderstorm warning for Allegheny County," followed by a black screen with the words, "Now back to our regularly scheduled programming. There's going to be a tornado and we're gonna die." Just like old man Rafferty's farmhouse when the roof blew off last year. "Stop trying to scare me or I'll tell Dad." And then something happened that caught my eye. It was indistinguishable. On the TV was an admittedly odd film, a camera focused unmoving on a cemetery and nothing more, with statuesque, familiar-looking tombstones erect in the midst of a violent storm. The camera didn't present different angles. No panning, no editing, no experimenting with angles. There was no narrative or plot. No characters. Just a cemetery. "Josh, look at the TV." "What about it?" "The cemetery. It looks, I don't know." "Brian, it's just a dumb horror movie." The camera was pointing at a gravestone, ahead of a freshly dug grave of recently poured dirt. And then it began to stir and move before a long, frail gray hand descended from the mud dressed in black, with a white button-up shirt under, and then another reaching upward, grabbing a hold of the gravestone. "Thriller, maybe?" "No, Bree. Thriller starts off with Michael Jackson turning into a werewolf." "Josh, seriously, look. Doesn't that look like the cemetery down the street?" He tossed his Rubik's Cube to the floor with an annoyed disposition, sat forward with his elbows on his knees, and rested his chin on his hands while squinting into the television. When Josh squinted, it always signified that he was taking something seriously. "You know, you little twerp, I actually agree with you." His brows now furrowed with curiosity and dread. "No, Bree, it's just a movie." "It's obvious." "Then where's the music?" "Actors. What?" And then a pale, rotting cadaver of a man with half of the skin melted away from his endoskeletal head pulled himself out of the ground, wailing and moaning. Suddenly, a violent crash of lightning audibly struck a tree on the TV at the exact same time it hit outside. "Josh, I'm scared." "This can't be." In the background, more bodies all dressed in suits and dresses began to pull themselves out of the soil, lurching and stumbling around, walking into one another, some falling over, not once breaking the fourth wall into the camera. It has to be a joke. I've seen movie zombies, but these corpses just seemed far too authentic. Blood running black, deep blue hematoma bruises on the temples, skin gray and pale, cataract white eyes just enough to barely distinguish the pupils. They began walking in front of and rubbing up against the camera lens, each strike of lightning and rumble of thunder. Outside uncannily correlated with what was happening in this disturbing movie. "Josh, look, they're all gone." Now it was only a first-person POV of empty holes and gravestones. Far in the background was another familiar landmark, the highway. We lived just on the other side. Finally, something occurred which convinced both of us that we were living a nightmare. Fire trucks sped past the graveyard down Main Street at the exact same time. They passed our neighborhood, just beyond the property line of our backyard. "Josh," my big brother could see the pleading in my eyes. "Please protect me." 3 words being spoken without being said aloud. "Brian, we need to lock the doors." But I was petrified, frozen in place. I had dissociated from my present state of consciousness inadvertently, focusing on a fallen corsage on the TV screen. The storm was really hitting hard now. All I could do was watch out of my peripherals as Josh raced back and forth throughout the house, locking doors. But then something shook me out of my trance. Mom and Dad. "Josh, what about Mom and Dad? What if they're in danger?" A parade of speeding police cars sounded out in the close distance. Suddenly, the focal point of this movie switched from the cemetery to the woods, dividing our neighborhood and the one behind us. There must have been 36 walking corpses stumbling and traipsing down our trail, straight in the direction of our house. The wind gust so forceful that the zombies began to trip over themselves and fall to the ground. But of course, they stood right back up and pressed on without distraction on their present warpath. Look outside, Josh, please. No. They can't know we're in here. What are we gonna do? I don't know, Brian, just keep watching. And the camera angle switched one last time to the back of our house. Josh, just peek out the kitchen window. It's our house. But he still refused to believe it. Brian, there's no way this is real. Then it's a prank. But we won't know until you move aside the curtain. The fear in his eyes was running visibly deep. He just didn't want to confirm the worst. But then he said it. Okay, just keep your eyes on the screen. He raced to the window and gently pulled aside the curtain, and then let go almost instantly, letting out an audibly horrified gasp. I could tell how frightened he was, by the simple fact that he slowly backed away rather than turning around. And on the TV screen, well, neither of us had to say anything. Our silence was confirmation enough. Brian, he whispered, don't make a sound. Heart rate jacked, veins flooded and pulsating with adrenaline, an absolute out-of-body experience. Boom! Thud! The foundation of the house shook as Josh backed all the way up to the living room couch. And then we saw the shadow seeping in through the kitchen window and moving about directly behind us through the bay windows. We were surrounded. Door handles jiggling, fists pounding, moans and howls lamenting the plight of the recently deceased. Josh, did you see the camera? Mom and Dad was all he could muster. Followed by one other thing. Turn it off. No more light, no more sound. And then we go and hide. What about our parents? I don't know, Brian, I don't know. Standing next to the TV, Josh reached down and ripped the plug from the wall. And at that moment, the front door began to click and it swung open. I screamed at the top of my lungs, buried my face in my arms, and began to sob. We were dead. That is, until a familiar falsetto voice rang out. Brian, are you scaring your brother again? Mom, standing in the doorway with armfuls of groceries, closing up her umbrella. Damn it, Joshua, see? I knew it was a bad idea to leave you two alone. The shadows disappeared, and when Dad finally plugged the TV back in, Night of the Living Dead was airing. Of all the fucking movies. Dad, did you guys see any... What? Never mind. Josh and I never spoke of it again except to each other. Of course, you'd imagine we'd wonder aloud to ourselves whether or not those things actually took place. But after something our dad asked us that evening, we knew we were right. Guys, why would you be playing outside in the rain? What do you mean? Asked Josh anxiously. The jig is up. Josh, both of your muddy handprints are all over the side of the house. Josh and I could only share a horrified glance before Dad said one more thing. Your mother was right. It was a bad idea to leave you two home alone. It happened back in 2016. My parents were out for the night. As it was their anniversary, I was left to watch the house, my sister, and my 10-acre lawn, witchy woodlands behind it. Even though we live in a nice part of upstate, NY, I still had an irrational fear that someone would come out of the woods and kidnap us. Little did I know that my supposedly irrational fear wasn't as irrational as I thought. I had to cut the grass, which was more than an annoyance, since it would take at least 30 minutes. I had procrastinated too much, and by the time I had reached the halfway mark, the sun had already set. I now had to finish the back end of the lawn, which was closer to the woodlands. I spun the lawnmower around and began pushing it towards the woods. That's when I noticed a man in the woods staring at me. What was I supposed to do? If I ran, then he would run too. If I turned in another direction, he would surely notice. I had to force myself to continue to walk straight towards the man who had now begun to walk towards me. It felt like walking the plank. 100 feet left and a knife comes into view. 50 feet and I can see the man has picked up his pace. 10 feet left and now the man was running. Just 10 feet from the edge of the woods. All of a sudden my sister opens the back door yelling my name and saying she had accidentally broke the bathroom faucet. This was my opportunity and a godsend. I slammed the door behind me and not a second later comes the sound of banging and screeching as the man dragged the knife against the storm door. I didn't bother to look. I rushed my sister into the upstairs bathroom and dialed 911. It only took 3 minutes for the first police car to show up. I explained everything. and showed them the scratched door and where the man came from. They did a thorough search inside and out and found nothing and no one. The CCTV cameras also didn't capture anything as they were in the wrong spots. That night I called my parents and explained everything. They assured me that they would come back early in the morning. I made sure every window and door was closed. There was only one door I couldn't close, the basement door. I told my sister to sleep upstairs tonight because I feared the man was a window peeper as well. I turned the volume on my phone all the way up to wake me up in case my CCTV detected any motion. It was 3 a.m. when a strange noise came from the basement. It sounded like a metal tray falling, but much deeper. I don't know why, but I felt a sudden boost of confidence. I walked up to the basement door when, to my horror, my phone dinged. It was from a camera in the basement. I looked at the live feed only to see blackness. I shit you not, a second later, heavy footsteps emanated from the stairs beyond the door. All that confidence that had built up inside me had drained away. I bolted back upstairs as the sound of our squeaky basement door filled the house. I quickly locked the door and shoved my bookshelf against the door. A second later, someone began banging against the door, followed by the sound of wood splintering. The police arrived quicker this time, and they quickly apprehended the same person I saw before. He had broken in through a basement window. He had also been spying on us from the woods for the past month. To this day, he has not given a motive, and as far as I know, the story never broke to the media. We still live in the same house, and the police have increased patrols around the woods.